Today we're going to talk about a truly incredible story. It's about how one college student's curiosity, a single cryptic line in a cemetery log, and, you guessed it, the internet, managed to solve a brutal murder that had police completely stumped for over 40 years. It's a story that really pulls back the curtain on some massive systemic failures, but also gives us a glimpse of a powerful new way to find justice.
And it all starts with this feeling. You know, that gut reaction you get when something is just deeply wrong? That's what Christina Skates, a 23-year-old biology student, felt. She just couldn't shake the idea that someone had been murdered, buried without even a name, and then just completely forgotten. And that one nagging feeling? Well, it was about to change everything.
So this is what she saw. Picture this, it's 2014, she's scrolling through some online cemetery records, and this one line just stops her cold. Unknown white female bones. It's not a name, it's just a cold, sterile label for what was left of a person. This one entry, number 82483, was the loose thread that was about to unravel a mystery that had been sitting dormant for 44 years.
Right. So our story really kicks off with this haunting discovery. Let's break down how a single line in a digital file managed to breathe life back into an investigation that the system had given up on decades ago.
You know what's so fascinating is that Christina Skates wasn't just some random person who stumbled on this. She was uniquely perfect for this job. Her biology background taught her to be analytical, and she was already a skilled amateur genealogist, so she knew her way around databases. But here's the real kicker. This wasn't some abstract case for her. The bones were found just 20 minutes from where she grew up. For her, this was personal.
So to really understand what Christina was up against, we have to rewind. We've got to go back to the very beginning, to the original cold case. Let's take a look at how a 1975 murder ended up as little more than a dusty file and an unmarked grave.
Okay, so February 15th, 1975. 3 teenage boys are out, and they make a grim discovery. Partial skeletal remains. Police confirmed pretty quickly it was a homicide. They found a bullet in the skull, but the investigation hit a brick wall fast. The remains were in bad shape, they checked dental records, they even took a wild guess it could be the fugitive Patty Hearst, but nothing. So just 3 months later, with no leads, the victim was buried, nameless, in a pauper's grave. And just like that, the case went cold.
And this really shows you the challenge they were facing back then. I mean, it's night and day. In 1975, their best tools were things like public flyers and memos between police departments. A 20-mile gap between two towns might as well have been 2,000 miles. Now, compare that to the toolkit we have today. DNA analysis, massive national databases, and, as we're about to see, the absolutely game-changing power of crowdsourced intelligence. This poor victim was basically lost in that technology gap for decades.
So, armed with modern tools and a really powerful sense of injustice, Christina basically launched her own digital crusade. When the official channels shut her down, she turned to the one place that has no red tape and no boundaries, the internet.
And she was really smart about it. She started with the old-school stuff, digging through newspaper archives on microfiche, but found next to nothing. Then she started calling police departments, only to hit one bureaucratic wall after another. Her first huge break came when one officer, Lieutenant Dom Silvas, actually listened to her and shared the original case files. With that crucial info in hand, she took her investigation to Reddit.
And you have to understand the kind of firepower she just tapped into. The subreddit, r/unsolved mysteries, had over 400,000 members. That's like a small city's worth of amateur detectives, genealogists, and even retired cops, all willing to put their brains together on one single case. All of a sudden, Christina wasn't working alone anymore. Not by a long shot.
Okay, this is where the story takes a really dramatic turn. The efforts of this online community lead to a forensic artist who could finally give the victim a face. But in doing his work, he would accidentally uncover a really shocking failure, right at the heart of the justice system.
So, meet Carl Koppelman. He's a retired CPA who became a forensic artist. When he first saw the photos from the case file, his professional opinion was pretty clear. He basically said, there's no way I can do anything with this. I mean, the skull was covered in mud, it was damaged, the jaw was missing. He thought a reconstruction was completely impossible.
But the case just sort of stuck with him. So in 2016, he's calling the medical examiner's office about a totally different case, and he just casually mentions the Strongsville bones. The response he got back was just chilling. What bones? The office had no record of this case anywhere in its modern system. Officially, this victim, these bones, they didn't exist.
So what happened? How could this be? Well, the victim was never entered into NamUs. That's the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. Think of it as the single most important tool for these kinds of cases. It's designed to connect the dots across the whole country. And because of a simple clerical error, probably from decades ago, this victim was totally invisible to the one system that could have identified her.
But once the case was finally entered into the system, everything changed. That digital ghost in the machine was suddenly visible. And for the first time in 44 long years, it was possible to give the unknown white female Bones her name back.
And it didn't take long. Soon after the case hit NamUs, a sergeant with the Akron police found a potential match, a 17-year-old girl named Linda Pagano who went missing back in 1974. And what sealed it for him was seeing Carl Koppelman's reconstruction. You put them side by side, the resemblance is just unmistakable. Even Carl said, "She looked like my drawing."
So who was this person who had been nameless for so long? Linda Pagano. She was 17, the youngest of 3 kids. Her friends called her Mitch. People said she was honest, hardworking, really independent. She saved up money from her job at an A&W to buy her own car. She wasn't a statistic. She was a real person with a life and friends and dreams.
Her last night was spent at a huge Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young concert. She got home really late, around 4 in the morning, and her stepfather was furious. They had a massive argument, and he threw her out of the house. And that was it. That was the last time anyone ever saw Linda Pagano alive. The very next day, she was reported missing.
So the final chapter here isn't just about solving a crime. This case, it turns out, left a huge legacy. It actually created a whole new model for getting justice for those who have been forgotten. 44 years. Let that sink in. That's how long it took. In June of 2018, DNA tests came back and confirmed it. The remains found all the way back in 1975 belonged to Linda. 44 years of her family just wondering, waiting, and searching for any kind of answer. And this, right here, is the human side of it all. Her brother, Michael, had actually suspected the remains were Linda's back in '75, but police just dismissed him. For him, this news was this overwhelming relief after just a lifetime of not knowing. It lifted a weight he'd been carrying for decades.
But the ending is definitely bittersweet, because solving this case exposed some really deep flaws in the system. The prime suspect, Linda's stepfather, he died back in 1990, so he never faced a trial. And maybe even worse, investigators found out Linda's case wasn't unique. Hundreds of other older cases had never been entered into modern databases, leaving who knows how many victims lost to history.
But despite all those failures, this case gives us a powerful new model for justice. It proves that one persistent person, armed with a laptop and backed by an online community, can do what official channels sometimes can't. And law enforcement is now finally starting to see just how valuable it is to work with these dedicated citizen investigators.
And that really leaves us with one last, haunting question. Linda Pagano was found because one person refused to just scroll past a weird line in a digital file. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other forgotten victims are out there, waiting in unmarked graves, just one click away from finally being found?